This podcast is brought to you by the Association for Coaching, one of the world's leading international professional bodies, which is advancing coaching in business and society worldwide. My name is Kate Jenkinson, and I am your host for this wonderful 8-part series, Neurodiversity in the Workplace, where, along with my guests, we explore the rapidly developing landscape that is neurodiversity in work. My guests are industry leaders, coaches, and business founders who share their passion, knowledge, and the real-life situations and scenarios from their own practical lived experience. Together, we examine the complexity of the workplace for those who experience the world differently. Whether you're a business owner, leader, coach, or trainer, these conversations highlight how you can make a difference to everyone's working world by looking at life through a neurodivergent lens. Well, I am delighted to have Fiona Plows, who's VP of Enterprise Innovation Programs, join me today to talk about your experience, Fiona, of neurodiversity in organisations. Welcome.
I feel very welcome, Kate, and thank you for having me. I hope that we have a helpful chat today, but at the very least, I'm sure it'll be a fun one. So looking forward to it.
It usually is, isn't it?
It usually is.
So where do we start? I'm curious to have you describe your professional journey and how neurodiversity has shown up for you and now forms part of your leadership.
Yeah, thank you. It's funny when people ask about professional journeys, there's always this impression, I think, that someone's career journey is this wonderful linear progression that goes from A to B, getting ever larger or higher or what have you.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's true for almost anyone, really. There's so much combination of luck, opportunity, happenstance, pre-networking, your initiative, etc. And I think embracing the Brownian motion of it all is...
Oh, I like the scientific element we've just brought in there. Yes, it is.
There you go. Yeah, it's a journey, but it's a bit more of a random walk, I think, for many folks. And embracing and enjoying that, right? It is about that journey and it's not necessarily about the destination, right? So that's one point philosophically. And we can talk about why is that important for people's careers? Because people put themselves under so much pressure to have this linear journey that I don't think exists except in movies or what have you. So that said, here are some of the things that I've done. I went to university in the UK.
Yes.
And got my PhD in chemistry at Edinburgh University. Then came over to America, like many people, for a couple of years. That was 25 years ago. And so here I am.
You didn't come back.
I didn't. I thought I was going for a postdoc, but I went to Stanford University and did my postdoc, and then Silicon Valley was early 2000s at the time. And actually, while people think Silicon Valley equals silicon, actually, there's an awful lot of biotechnology in Silicon Valley as well, in the Bay Area. So it's tech heavy generally. And I got into tech companies and was developing first as an individual contributor and then as a manager. And like many people that jump from individual contributor to manager, it's got its own set of stories and fun. That wasn't terribly easy either. But I was very passionate, Kate, in my early career. I would see people leadership make decisions based on absolutely no understanding of the technology whatsoever. And it would drive me just completely bonkers. And I would say, okay, well, why don't I aim for more? And then I can make decisions that not only are based on what the company needs, but hopefully also on what the people needs and what the technology is capable of. And that was the start of the journey, maybe thinking a bit bigger. And it isn't always that the examples around you are great. Sometimes the examples around you are that, boy, this is not working. And I would always think to myself, if I ever get a chance, I want to do something a bit differently. And so whether the situation around me was good or not good, I would treat it as learning.
Yes.
And be internalizing that and considering it and building my own inner viewpoint of leadership and expertise and what have you, and carry that with me. Whatever the experience was, I would take those learnings and I would be able to carry them with me. And that was the start of the journey of going on to first a group lead position, supervisor basically, and then leading bigger groups and bigger initiatives. over time, I spent 15 years really leading R&D teams, basically different technologies. And I have been lucky enough to get my hands on assays and instruments and somewhere along the way think about, is this an interesting problem? It used to be very tech forward and now it's solving problem forward, right?
Okay.
You start off thinking, I'm going to become an expert in such and such in technology. And I discovered that wasn't actually what rang my bell. It was about, are we solving a problem that is meaningful to people? Are we producing a product or a solution that's going to help people? And are the people in my team having a good time along the way? Are they supported? Are we providing a good work environment? Again, 2010, I think companies were starting to realize that thinking about the work environment was a thing, and not yet different types of people or different, individual involvement.
Can I ask you a question about that?
Yeah, sure.
Because I had a little bit of experience of working with incubator organisations that were looking at tech. And it always seemed to me that people would kind of lead with the tech, like you said. They would kind of go, here's some amazing, wonderful tech. Now what can we do with it? And I was sitting there as the HR director going, but there might not be anybody who wants it and there might not be jobs in it. Isn't it about that as well? So actually, when I hear you say that, it feels like quite an unusual perspective you were taking at that time. Do you think so?
That's a good insight. Yeah, it was an internal realization for me. Hey, it's not about being an expert in X technology. And it allowed me to really broaden my view of what was interesting or possible and be a lot more open to career development. So I can do that. The other thing too, as you say, I mean, for all you budding entrepreneurs out there, right? Just because you can do this one unique technology doesn't necessarily mean that anyone else can do it, or that there's really a purpose. And so I'd always say, what's the purpose?
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Purpose-driven.
Yeah, be purpose-forward. Hey, what we're doing is we're allowing patients to X. We're facilitating people to Y. We're making this thing happen that couldn't happen before. We're solving such problem. We're making people's lives better or more enjoyable, whatever it is in some way. And then if you're there and you've truly found something where people's lives can be helped or improved or made more joyful, the tech will follow. And it may not look exactly like the tech that you have. Nowadays, companies use this word pivot all the time. Oh, we pivoted from this technology to that technology. We pivoted from this market to that market. And people talk about being market driven. But I would say it's more about being problem driven or purpose driven.
Yeah. This is why we get on so well. I love being purpose driven. And my purpose at the moment is to kind of explore neurodiversity in the workplace. It's a real passion of mine. So how do you see neurodiversity intersecting with innovation?
I just said most of my career has been in R&D. And so I was thinking about this last night, actually. I was preparing the podcast and I was like laughing because I thought, the thing about R&D is it's often a hyper concentration of neurodiversity. And so neurodivergent is the new neurotypical in R&D, frankly.
That's interesting. Yeah, it's just the norm, isn't it? That people think differently. Yeah, that's why it's fascinating.
Think of your stereotypical engineer. And what you tend to find is that the managers are those people who can be left brain, right brain, can be people and tech, and can embrace people who think differently, sometimes very differently. I've definitely had in my life teams where I've been sort of given this team and then taken aside and cautioned, oh, watch out for this so-and-so engineer. He's, quote, difficult to manage, unquote. And fair play, right? Said engineer would just blast into my cubicle and be like, Fiona, I have to tell you about X, but here's the thing. It would generally be some highly important thing that he was just bursting to let me know about. And he was kind of like a little pressure cooker. He'd been not listened to for so long that kind of needed to vent. But over time, that became less as he learned that he had been listened to and that those listenings were often acted upon. And he calmed down. We developed more of a trust-based relationship. And so because I was open to him needing to express himself in this particular way, his urgent way, and open to him, considering perhaps he actually had something important to say, then he became this incredibly reliable employee who would, guess what, tell me important things that other people weren't telling me that I needed to know. And that's incredibly valuable. Now, would I put him in front of senior executives and say, just chit chat about whatever you like? No, he had no context awareness for who he was talking to or social nuance or sensitivity. But if you were able to interact with him where he was at, then he was very easy to manage and a very valuable person to have around.
So I'm fascinated. How can it be that somebody has established a reputation, and they've not knowingly done it deliberately either, but they have this reputation of being difficult to manage, or early in my career, I'd have people I'm coaching who are very challenging, and yet just through the process of your leadership or management, they've become this easy to relate to. So what's the magic? What did you do, Fiona?
It's as simple as listening. This is this thing that I'm going to say is a flavor of the day. And people talk about active listening skills and what have you. And I'm going to say what I find to be a very important management truth. You can't replace actually caring. And I'll say it again. You cannot replace or substitute for actually caring about the person. Neurodivergent, hard to manage, whatever it is. If you're having a career development discussion, if you're trying to get the best out of the team, if you're trying to solve an urgent problem, if you're trying to deal with whatever somebody has going on in their personal life, or even if they just happen to have acquired a label, quote unquote, difficult to manage, fundamentally, actually caring is super invaluable.
Yeah.
And people overemphasize, I think, soft skills, and I think, oh, if you don't have soft skills and you're not socially aware, then I'll never make it as a manager. Well, let me tell you, I had a manager who was super not socially aware, and he was one of the best managers I ever had. Why? Because he really cared, really super cared. He'd come and ask you in his shy and quiet way, what do you need? How are things going? What have you? And here's the thing. He would help you when you asked for help, and he would leave you alone when you didn't need help, and he would deal with his level of management and take barriers out of the way. And he was kind of socially awkward and kind of socially blind to emotional nuance, and he was pretty upfront about that. But so you would have to kind of tell him, like, this thing is really annoying me and it's diminishing my ability to get this thing done. And he would be like, oh, great, thanks for telling me. And then he would deal with the thing. And so it was because he's super cared. And of course, I've had managers who are socially much more capable, but some of them have been great managers because they cared, and others have not been great managers because they were highly charismatic and socially capable, high social EQ even, but they just didn't care all that much. And so to me, that is really the key.
I'm nodding along. One of the best managers I had when I first encountered him, I was quite anxious because he was taking over from a very charismatic leader that I had chosen to join. And he very shortly left and was replaced with somebody who was very introverted, but very self-aware, and made no excuses for that. But exactly like you said, they absolutely cared. They cared about everybody and everything, but they didn't let that care get in the way of the business essentials and what we needed to do. But they somehow managed to incorporate all of it together in this very calm, quiet, consistent, understated way. And it was probably the best leadership and management I've experienced.
Oh, I really want to pick on that. Now I'm going to resonate off of you, Kate, because you...
Oh, are you? Go on.
Yeah, because you mentioned, as always, I love chatting. So this calm thing that you mentioned, Kate, right? It's what you're stating is that this person managed to care about the people and the business imperatives, but without allowing themselves to become overwhelmed. And when we talk about neurodiverse people, and we'll get more to this later perhaps, is not being overwhelmed by whatever the situation, the flow of information, many things. Actually, establishing your own center to operate from is critically important. And then I think people sort of struggle perhaps early career with, oh, your armor is up or it's down, versus establishing a calm center and then sort of permeable wall, right? You can control that connection to the outside, the people, the situation, the flow of information, whatever, so that you're not crushed and overwhelmed by chaos.
I love that. That is exactly what I did when I went into my own business, was to say to myself, I am at the center of my world. I am at the center of my life. And when you center yourself, you are much more stable against anything that you encounter in the world around you. And I think establishing your center is something that all of us can aim to do. I love that in my coaching work, is helping people find their center, because there's nothing really in our education or general management training that would help you do that. I think there is once you get to senior levels of leadership, but quite frankly, everybody needs to know where their center is and where they're operating from.
Absolutely. So I'll give you another anecdote here on exactly that. Not my first management gig, but mid-career level maybe. As was often the advice for women, use your EQ, like you've been trained to be more socially aware than the guys, and so use that as your superpower and be more aware of other people. Well, yeah, that's maybe a strength, but it can leave you more open to people pleasing and also to the emotions of other people, right? And so you have to be cautious with that.
Yeah.
I had often thought through, okay, what does my boss want and need? What are their goals? What are they looking for? What is their management style? How do I make them be successful? And then sort of target, like, what am I doing in order to fit in with that and facilitate my boss's goals, which on the face of it sounds logical, right? It had worked for me to a certain extent. And I just had this one boss that was emotionally like a billiard ball. I could get no grip on this slippery, smooth surface, right? I was making no headway with this and I didn't get to meet them terribly much. And they would say stuff and I would try and be enthusiastic and conversations would go nowhere. We didn't click. And it was very frustrating for me. It was a frustrating point. And I thought, right, okay, forget this person. Why do I come to work? And literally, I remember sitting in the cube farm. Why? Why do I come to work? And I came up with these answers. Listen, I'm here to solve meaningful problems for people in the world, patients, customers, what have you. And I'm here to make a good work environment for the team. Great. Starting tomorrow, I'm going to come in and I'm going to be focused on these things. And I was centered on myself instead of centered on pleasing. And I'm like, great. And I took that and I rejuvenated myself with my own energy and went around my merry way. And that boss immediately became my friend, and we've worked well together and known each other for more than a decade now at this point, and we still get on. And why? Because they could sense that I wasn't trying to please them, but instead operating from an authentic center.
Amazing. That's a lovely story. I just love the description of them as a billiard ball as well. My poetic brain has gone off in lots of different. Can you imagine? All the balls have just gone everywhere.
I want to pull this together too, where I like to give people this advice in profession, because I said nothing substitutes for caring, but you can overextend yourself. And I just told another story of maybe overextending yourself, right? It's treat yourself like the star you are. Think that you're a sports star. If you're in America, baseball star, what have you. You're expected to give your professional all, but not your personal all. You might be transferred at the end of the season. Your contract may not be renewed, yet you're expected to give your all and play your professional best in every game. And so, yeah, you turn up and you play as best as you possibly can authentically, but you don't commit your inner self to whether or not you win the game. You don't hang your sense of well-being or your sense of worth, thank you, to whether or not you won this latest game. Your sense of self-worth comes from that internal center. And then with that, you then play your best in the game and you treat yourself like that star. Do care, do give your professional best. Do not get personally overwhelmed and overextended by the latest win or loss.
Honestly, so many metaphors. People pleasing is something we all can relate to, I think, particularly if we're neurodivergent. So I was actually recently in a coaching session and somebody asked me to explain what my thoughts were around whether the environment influences or we influence the environment, which trumps which. And it's like, well, that's a big question. But my answer to that was, my personality is not the norm for any environment I've worked in. And so in a work environment, I am going to be consensus driven and collaborative because I'm trying to understand how what I do works in this environment. In my own business, I am very much motivated by my own passions and my individual purpose, and I'm not looking for consensus at all. I'm just looking to change the world. So how do those two different personalities possibly show up in such different ways? And it's absolutely down to the environment in which we operate in.
I think it's a truth too. You talk about your authentic self, and this is not my original comment, but we're all complex people and we're all capable of many expressions in many different environments. So what's authentic in one environment isn't necessarily the same as what's authentic in another. To take an extreme example, like if I'm playing with my kid on the floor, tickling them or what have you, and being silly, that's authentic in that environment. But it would be really weird and inauthentic in a professional environment. And it would definitely not be something I would, quote, naturally consider doing.
No, fascinating.
I do want to go back to your question about neurodiversity intersecting with innovation. I don't think I ever answered it.
Okay.
There's something I really want to say to that, which is actually neurodiversity, I think, can be a real superpower. That if you are not thinking about the things in the same way as everyone else, then you can think about things being different. And that might sound obvious, but the ability to see what is there and think about how it might be different is actually unusual and somewhat of a superpower. And often I think neurodivergency, that divergent, actually, it also means your viewpoint can be very divergent. People may experience this as being scattershot. So I think you do have to train this somewhat, but it means you can think on a systems level and not just in one lane, right? But can I look across the whole system, analyze systematically what's going on, and look for things that could be going wrong or could be done better, or a gap, something that might be there that doesn't exist yet today, and then imagine, hey, here's the thing that doesn't exist yet today. It could be this. And then think about how to do that and then go and inspire other people and then bring other people along on that journey with you. So when you do take that ability to have a broad viewpoint and absorb different information and not just be in your lane and do your job and only think about that, think about systems. Number one, that's an incredibly strong learning engine. And number two, if you can contribute to the analysis, that can be a superpower. And that is amazing in innovation, whether that innovation is technical, organizational, or other.
Yeah. I would find that in organisations I would join, they would have these real big problems that the current thinking had created. And that often as you're a new person, everyone must have experienced this, coming into an organisation new and fresh, you can often see things quite distinctly. So you have that advantage. So I think everybody can be creative and innovation given the right conditions. But I think what I've noticed about neurodiversity in the workplace is that those people who just think differently anyway, they can't switch that off. And so regardless of what the norms are, they are always thinking about what might be different or possible, or drawn to the details that others aren't. So there's always that constant engine of possibility whirring away in the background. I might just be talking about myself here, but...
No, I agree. And sometimes I think it can seem so obvious that this thing is wrong and people can know that they are right, capital R, right. And this is maybe a pitfall to watch out for. Sometimes you'll hear the word rigidity used, but it can be even a softer thing, right? Just a conviction of rightness. And they were like, look, this thing is wrong. And when you are so direct in that conclusion, and it can be so obvious to that person, quote unquote obvious.
Yeah.
And they can become very frustrated if other people don't see that same thing and get instantly convinced. And so understanding that you may need to help other people on their change management journey and get them along with you.
You are just echoing the first piece of feedback I got from my first manager, which he said to me, he said, Kate, he said, you can be as right as you like. It doesn't mean it's going to happen. And I went, oh, really? So I'd been doing independent research, been basically charting my own path. Like I said, it is my way to do that. I will just do things my own way. Entered this organisation, was kind of really surprised at how things were being done, told them the right way to do it, and nothing happened. And I'm like, well, why?
Oh, yeah.
I resemble that remark, Fiona.
So again, if you're out there and you're thinking, oh, I see all these things at my organization and I've got the superpower, I'm just going to go and tell people.
Yes, then it'll all change.
Just think about understanding it's one thing, but how do you translate that into a journey for people who don't see that yet? How do you bring them along with you? And how do you persuade them? How do you do change management? So I think getting into change management, if you are interested in management and developing your career along that path, particularly senior management, understanding change management, again, not in a check the box kind of way, but really truly, how do individuals move along the change management journey and how does an organization move along the change management journey? It's going to help you into getting your visions go out and live in the world.
I learned a lot about change and influencing, and I was fascinated, having gone from a science degree into organisations. Yeah, that was where I was drawn to. Fascinating. You have a background, Fiona, don't you, in DE&I, diversity, equity, inclusion, if we're allowed to use that phrase now, I think. how does that help with integrating neurodiversity, or how do the two relate to each other?
I think this is more of a passion for inclusion generally, but again, in a real sense, because if you really think about it, if you break it down, neurodivergence is one aspect of an experiential journey. Like, people turn up and they've got all kinds of backgrounds. And some people may be neurodivergent, and some people may be stressed. Some people may be carers for people at home. Some people maybe have worked 10 years and taken night courses to get here. Everyone's bringing their experience. It's more about really trying to see, where are people at now in the workplace, and how do you actually include them? And looking at, how do they express themselves? How do you include them? And where can you potentially help, potentially coach? Although coaching, and I say this to someone who is a coach, but my personal viewpoint here is that coaching, if you're really doing it right, is not actually about the old school gym coach view where that person is also your teacher and also an authority over you. But coaching people is about providing a nugget of information that helps them to empower themselves. And when you approach it from that compassionate viewpoint, you can often give people information because they sense you're trying to help them versus control them. That's vitally important, right? So how you approach people is important, and understanding what they can and can't do, like that engineer I mentioned earlier, right?
Yeah.
For meetings, I think if you think about, again, this is kind of more of the flavor of the day, 20 years ago, how to manage meetings wasn't such a thing. But again, there's a lot of rigid, this is how you structure an agenda, and this is how you do this and that. And the nugget of it all, I would say, is get in there and have a look about two things. Organizationally, is it organized or is it chaotic? And is it working for the team or not? Are we getting the job done?
Yeah.
And finally, is everyone getting included? Right. So we're looping back around to the new, because you may have people in there who take one point and then they're chatting on for 10 minutes. That can be an aspect of neurodivergence. Or it may be somebody who is thinking about an early question and never speaks up. That could be an aspect of neurodivergence. Or those people, neither of them could be neurodivergent, and they just happen to be a chatty person and a quiet person. But it's about noticing that the flow of the meeting isn't going well and other people are getting edged out. And so then you, as the leader of the meeting, whether you're the manager or not, if you're leading the meeting, you can structure it. You can really think about, what is a structure that works for this team? Sometimes you can explicitly do that exercise with the team. How do we want to work as a team? How do we show up here? Sometimes that's not going to fly, and you really have to structure it yourself. And you can think about, do I need more round robins where I deliberately start with the quiet people so that they speak first? And by the time we get to chatty Jim, they only have the allocation of airtime and they can't take half an hour of a 1 hour meeting. What structures do I put in place to make sure that we hear all the viewpoints and we consider what we need to do here?
So that's so interesting because, I'm passionate about inclusion as well. And so few people seem to consider how they structure the meeting such that everybody is included. They kind of leave that responsibility to the individuals to work it out for themselves.
Yep.
And one of the biggest changes I was able to implement when I was kind of leading meetings was to create thinking time first. So we think we've got a meeting, we have to talk and fill the whole time with words or presentations, but actually sometimes in the meeting we just need a space because we've asked a big question. The first time people maybe have heard it, and we need to give them time to think and really bring those thoughts to the fore. And it's probably because I'm an introvert, and probably because I was the person that used to say, oh, can we just go back to the 2 agenda items before? Because I've just had a thought about that one because it went quiet. It's probably that made me want to do that for others. But so few people seem to structure meetings that way.
Often if you're trying to do stuff as a team exercise, it's nice if you create forums or opportunities for everybody to actually do work in the meeting. So often, again, meetings are one person talking, and parallel work is not considered as much as you might think. And that's losing the capacity of everyone else in the meeting. Okay, what are concrete examples of that? For example, if you have a brainstorming exercise, it isn't just one person talking out loud and one person writing on the wall, but you get everybody to write something down and then you combine it afterwards. And then by definition, everyone's going to contribute. Miro boards are great, right? Online whiteboards are wonderful because these are collaboration spaces. If you get in there and you actually structure and manage it, you can have a meeting and be like, everybody get on the online whiteboard. And now we're going to have a timed exercise where everyone works on this. Okay, we've got a chaotic bundle of suggestions on this board. Can you all group them together and go, or have a brainstorming exercise right then and there? And so it's using these tools for maximum parallel processing efficiency, right? Get everybody to contribute. It's more effective. It's also more fun for the team.
It is more fun.
Yeah. Imagine if you weren't just sitting there passively for like 9/10 of the meeting, but you had a couple of exercises in there where you all got to actually contribute. Wouldn't that be great?
Well, I'm smiling for two reasons, really. One, because Miro boards are like the online version of having a stack of Post-it notes. And many neurodivergent people I know love their Post-it notes. And the other thing you say about parallel working, since I've come out of the corporate world and I work in my own business, I actually do body doubling, which is kind of what you say, but on my own agenda. But it's so much easier to work with somebody else who's working in a parallel way. The motivation and the energy is there.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of productive meeting where you co-create content together. You end up with a product at the end of the meeting.
I love co-creation as well. So all these ideas for people to maybe take away and use. And the thing we've talked about in some of our other guests is these ideas don't cost any additional money.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can also find additional tools that work for you, right? There's a lot of very underutilized one. Meetings and meeting cleanup is huge, right? Because that's the one common work activity for almost everyone in an organization, from your people doing stand up on the floor to people all the way through to the board. You're all going to get in meetings. And so doing meetings better is not only better for the individuals, but if you stack up all of those hundreds and thousands of meetings, it's got to be better for the organization too, right? That's a win-win. Brilliant. Really managing information and calendars. Touched on this earlier, but really want to highlight this for people. Obviously, find things that work for you, but don't just be the passive victim of calendar overload or information overload. Like, you can actively manage these. For anyone, but I would say neurodivergent folks in particular, if you're just constantly open to all information all the time, it can easily become overwhelming. If you're totally cut off, you can become bored, de-energized. So do you need people? Do you need an interflow of engagement, conversation? Or do you need to refresh yourself maybe with technical articles, with a meeting, with reading the company emails, whatever it is? So think about information as your intellectual cups of coffee. You need enough to keep your brain stimulated and get going, but not so much that you become jittery and overwhelmed and incapable of actually remaining focused.
I love your metaphors, Fiona. I'm writing them down. Intellectual cups of coffee, billiard ball managers. I'm here for this.
Thank you. The other thing that I really want people to do is really look at your own calendar. If you're a manager, look at your team's calendars, please. If it's you, look at your own calendar and just look at, is it wildly different every day? Is it 5 a.m. one day? Is it 7 p.m. the next day? Do meetings seem randomly chaotic? Do you feel like you have no control? And start thinking about, do I go to some of these meetings just to be informed? Could I just get the minutes afterwards? Can I put boundaries around which days I work early or late, if that's a thing for you? I once had a team where they said, we have to have meeting chaos because, and they were a software team, and they said, well, we have to do peer reviews and we never know when somebody is finished with a piece of code. And so it turns up on the calendar in the middle of when they're trying to work generally. And we just quote unquote have to go. And of course, everybody's grumpy all the time, and some of them may not have prepared. And so the meeting doesn't necessarily go that well because you have to have reviewed the code in order to have a meeting about code review. It was not a very functional team, and everybody was mad at each other, and there was a lot of people storming out of meetings and what have you. So it was a real situation. And we had a chat. How do you want this to work for you? Okay, how often generally in a week are we having these code reviews? Great, we're going to create slots Monday, Wednesday, Friday morning, because that's the maximum number of times in a week. You can't just randomly do it on Tuesday afternoon, right? And so everybody knew, great, there's going to be these code reviews, which means we can prepare for it. And they stack up. That was often enough for the team. And then if we didn't need one on a Wednesday, we didn't do it. But if they did need it, then it was at a regular time and not chaotic. And we structured all our meetings to be in the morning so everybody could then code all afternoon or evening and just not be left alone and not bothered, to have a big chunk of being unbothered time. And guess what? The people changed how they behaved and changed their enjoyment of the work environment. It costs nothing. Costs nothing.
Exactly. Lovely. I think these are great examples. I'm interested to know, in your experience, what do you think are the barriers that could prevent neurodivergent individuals from reaching senior leadership? Do we see many people in senior leadership roles who are openly neurodivergent?
You see more of it. I mean, certainly openly, right? I think people may have not been so open before, either deliberately, like they're covering, or inadvertently because behavioral norms was so much more rigid 25 years ago, and you all had to behave in exactly the same way. And that has relaxed a bit. There's different flavors of personalities. But nonetheless, yes, there are barriers. I mean, we have talked about information overload and overwhelm, right? If that becomes a habit for you and you don't moderate information so that you take it in, you synthesize it, you make it actionable, you influence, you do change management. I think many of us have seen these graphs where over the course of a career, you go from tech skills being dominant in your daily activities to soft skills, EQ being dominant in your daily activities. That does not mean you have to be exactly socially competent in the same way as everyone else, but you do have to develop a style that allows you to influence, accomplish, manage people, manage organizations, whatever it is that you're doing. So you have to grow yourself over time. And I think that has to be deliberate, that you are wanting to do that and wanting to grow that skill set. If it's not for you, that's absolutely fine. Maybe target being a senior individual contributor instead. There's many positions now that didn't used to be true. Focus is really a big one. Focus on your organizational goals. So we talked about information overload. You can also have goal overload. Distinguish between urgent and important. Distinguish between important now and important long term. Keep an eye on your goals, and don't just add to this infinite hopper of work, activities, and goals, all just pile in a big hopper above your head and stream down on you, totally crushing you underneath this unending stream of activities. So take a stop.
You just described my work, my last job. Oops.
Yeah, be very deliberate. Take a stop, really think through, what are my long-term goals? Dedicate some time to reaching them. It might be long-term goals for you or the organization. What are my priorities for me, for my team? If you're a manager, if you're an individual contributor, just look through the giant stream of stuff that has probably cropped up, and perhaps you're running around hair on fire trying to do them, super overwhelmed. Stop, breathe, work out. I've got 20 tasks. Each of them take 10% of my time. Well, now I'm at 200%. And so just map that out. Task 1, 10%, task 2, 20%, task 3, whatever, get your list. And go and have a chat with your manager. All right, I've got these 20 tasks and it adds up to 200 or 300% of my time. What would you like me to prioritize in order to be the most effective?
It's a challenge.
Yeah, it is a challenge. And it's periodic. You can't just do it one time and done. But again, here's the thing, when everything's urgent and important and number one priority, which again, particularly true for neurodivergent folks, right? They really can internalize that.
It's hard.
It's very hard. And you can internalize that and absorb energy from the organization, which is another thing I would say to watch out for, that can get in your way because it can contribute to burnout, right? So really, really think about that. Flow of information, flow of energy from the organization, and ways to moderate it. Prioritization, though, if you think about, all right, here's 4 1-week tasks. Okay, that's going to take me 4 weeks, right? You would think, well, okay, there's a couple of different ways to do that. The first way is they're all the most urgent thing ever. So just work on all of them because they're all important.
That's what I would do.
And also switch between them. Well, you're going to deliver all of them at week 4 because you've been working on all of them at the time, or actually probably week 5 because there's code switching, right? There's overhead switching where if you're taking your attention and going project 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, it's chaotic and the brain can't really do that. So it doesn't matter neurodivergent, neurotypical, you're not as effective that way. The other way to do it is to have they're 1-week tasks, remember? So deliver 1 at week 1, 1 at week 2, 1 at week 3, and 1 at week 4. And what you notice is that the organization got those tasks faster and you weren't overwhelmed despite it was the same workload. So how you do tasks can be very important. And explaining that, walking your manager through it if you're an individual contributor, like they are all important, but if you let me focus on one at a time, I will deliver them for you faster. Project managers already know this. This is like the project manager's secret.
It is, but it seems to be, I mean, I worked in HR and it was just very much as you described. There were many projects. Managers tended not to align their change management projects with each other. So you were the one who would get everything and have to structure it and organise it. So yeah, it's a challenge. And I really love hearing your ideas, Fiona, on how to do these and make it easier to kind of work with that overwhelm that many of us feel. I don't think you need to be neurodivergent to feel that actually in the current world of work.
No, not at all. I mean, again, back to inclusion, if you're really thinking about inclusion and tools that help people be included rather than overwhelmed, burnt out, stressed, what have you, you can pick and choose. But the idea is that regardless of your particular flavor of personality or neurodivergence or not, you're getting to an environment that works for you and the organization. Again, win-win, right?
Yeah. So what kind of support systems might be helpful, or ones even that you've introduced, again, thinking about helping neurodivergent leaders thrive?
I don't think that I necessarily distinguish neurodivergence such as paying attention to each individual as an individual and where they're at. Because again, for some people, neurodivergence shows up as rigidity or over-talking. And for other people, it might show up as overwhelm and under-talking. And so it's about, for me, caring about people as individuals on a pretty deep level. And if you're a manager who does that, it's going to take up a chunk of your time. It's not like, 95% of my job is doing the group tasks and 5% is caring about people. It's going to take a lot more.
What's the balance, would you say, Fiona?
About 50-50, I would say.
I know when you've described to me that style of leadership and management, you kind of have got a lovely metaphor for that as well. The gardening metaphor, you've talked to me about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I'll come to that in a second.
Okay. I'm preempting. I'm excited to hear it.
I want to talk about it 100%. So things for individuals to help neurodivergent leaders, and that can be leading from your position as an individual contributor, or it can be a leader in the organization. Leadership can come in many, many flavors. Peer support groups are certainly one thing. Mentoring, coaching, and sponsorship, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in just 1 second, is nothing. And then some of the other things I've talked about, developing your focus, developing your soft skills, inclusive meetings, calendar control. These are things that will help anyone, but will particularly help, I think, neurodivergent people do well and succeed in the workplace.
What are the things that you've introduced? What kind of approach do you take on inclusion? I love the focus you give it. It's about everybody getting what they need to be successful. So how do you describe that?
Thanks, Kate. And we've had some pretty good conversations on this in the past, and you can get into probably a whole podcast just on growing leaders in an organization, non-neurotypical or not. And what I like to talk about is gardener leaders as well as firefighter leaders. I use this, and I love this to go out and live in the world, and I use this very advisedly. We talk about different leadership styles, and you have this split, I would say, between organizations which are focused on goal-orientated and crisis-orientated. We're in the red, we haven't made the sales figures, we've got a problem, we've got a fire, fix it, fix the problem, fix the fire, make the goal, right? Goal orientation. I call that firefighting leadership. And then we have, okay, but let's accept all the different leadership styles and we all think differently and what have you. But in practice, that's not what we're actually doing. And I think, talk about change management, organizations aren't ready to go from one leadership style to 5 or 10 or 15 or whatever the particular rubric is. But how about we go from 1 to 2? How about those leaders who are always doing well? They're always green on our metrics. They grow people, they prevent fires, and they might weed out things that are problematic as well. Like a good gardener knows what to grow and what to keep down. Doesn't mean you encourage uncontrolled growth, but your leadership style is more growth orientated. And we can measure that and we can recognize it and we can give those people just as much airtime and grow them as leaders and give them opportunities because we can measure and recognize it. And for organizations, that's huge, right? If you can measure, this department never goes in the red, perhaps we might take a look at that leader and get them to take on more or give them opportunities, right? There's a lot you can do.
Does it depend what you measure as well? I mean, those growth-oriented impacts, are they measurable?
Yeah, absolutely. And it depends about monitoring them in rewarding them, right? It's about rewarding that behavior. If you have managers who are executing something that you say is important but not rewarding them, I think that's the disconnect. And an example is retention. Often organizations talk about retention or turnover as a metric because if employees are happy, they stay, right? And the happy employees are also productive employees. And so they have a better work experience and the organization benefits. And so retention is this metric that organizations will put out there. But then you say, well, but at the end of the day, are you actually rewarding the managers with high retention? Are you promoting them? Are you recognizing that? So it's turning measurement into action. So retention is one, employee engagement is another. If you have low employee engagement, again, often organizations have surveys and they measure this all the time. Oh, we can see that this organization has low engagement. Let's focus here and let's coach the managers and what have you. Well, how about the organizations with high engagement? How about we recognize and sponsor those managers? That's what I wanted to say earlier. It's the difference between coaching, mentoring, and sponsorship, right? Those often get mushed together. If you are in the position of looking out for other people, a coach is somebody, often you're coaching a specific skill for a certain time, right? A mentor is somebody who may be working with over a longer period of time and they're helping you grow and develop as an individual or professionally or both. Sponsorship is when you give opportunities to that individual. And typically people who quote unquote look different, and that difference can be gender, it can be cultural identity, it can be neurodiversity, it can be one of a number of things, tend to receive coaching and mentorship, but not sponsorship.
That's an important distinction.
And it's extremely important. And so, as well as saying, how do you coach people and grow them into leaders, you need to recognize potential and give sponsorship, advocate for them. You can even do this from an individual contributor by advocating for your peers. Oh, so-and-so would be good at X projects, you can say to your manager. So that's sponsorship. If you're a manager, you can advocate for somebody, whether they report to you or not, because you believe that they are talent or at least potential and could grow.
Do you think neurodivergent or non-typical talent gets overlooked then, Fiona, just by being different?
Difference gets overlooked. And that's absolutely, like, you can go and see plenty of studies in the industry on who gets promoted and how. And I'll just focus on women for a second, but it's whatever identity, is that men get promoted on potential and women get promoted on achievement. But it's very hard to have those achievements if you're not in a position where you can get those achievements. I've literally had people say things like, well, maybe we'll take a chance on, and of course, why is it taking a chance on the different person, woman, whatever? We're going to lean into the potential of this person, and then we're going to grow them in place. We're going to provide them with what they need, which might be different from one individual to another. Shocker.
Yes.
And so it's not just about that person growing themselves and their capabilities, which, yes, we all have responsibility for. But if you're in a leadership position in an organization, it's about putting your money where your mouth is and not just recognizing potential, but giving opportunities to potential. Sponsorship. And I would also say, too, for those folks who have navigated through difference and are to a senior leadership position, you've probably done it through a little less sponsorship and a little more just resilience and sheer grit and hanging in there. People didn't sponsor you, so you didn't learn that skill.
Yeah, that's an interesting point.
It's a power that exists in the world. So I encourage you to say, hey, this is a lever of power that you can exercise in the world, and you can choose to sponsor people. Now, obviously, it's not all people all the time. You only have a certain number of poker chips to play here. So choose wisely, but definitely exercise the power of sponsorship, because it's a measure of power that leaders use within organizations.
And I mean, I recognise that from my career. I think the opportunities I actively sought out versus those I was given, I had to find those opportunities myself quite often. And through sheer, resilience, stubbornness, self-belief, make them happen. But often they were the high-risk opportunities. So, as a woman in leadership and often the only one in an organisation, I was put really, this is either a fail or success. It isn't either or. You're in a high-risk situation often. So that's my experience. Maybe it's just being in HR.
No. I mean, we can laugh about it and I can tell stories that would be funny or perhaps horrifying, right? If you imagine being a female R&D manager back in the early 2000s and you'd walk into a room, there's like 50 guys and you. So
yeah.
You're not just the only female leader, but often the only female. And so at the time, you had to have this intense resilience, almost you resist being sandblasted each and every day in ways large and small. But here's the thing, that also is a growth engine. If you survive it, and I'm not arguing for it, but if you survive it, you become very capable and very self-reliant. You just have to watch yourself that you might be a bit too self-reliant and you don't judge others by having to be equally as self-reliant.
Which I think is a really important point you made about sponsorship and also encourage. And now, as I'm working for myself, I've had to learn to ask for help. I can't do everything myself. So I do need to know when I am wearing myself out maybe, or kind of getting overwhelmed, and asking for help with things that are not my strengths.
Which is absolutely. And then the other thing I'll say for folks who are, I don't want to say it's just Gen X, but certainly that's what I can have the experience to speak of. When we were growing up, we definitely got it's worthy if it's hard, right?
Yeah.
And so the difficult things are the good things. And if you examine that thought for a little bit, you'll say, well, that means that the things that are easy, that come naturally to me, that I'm good at, are the less worthy things, ? Or perhaps they're things that I'm good at. Perhaps that's a strength I can lean into, right? And so doing things that are easy and joyful and fun is not abrogating your responsibilities. It's leaning into a strength.
Exactly. And actually, it's a really interesting perspective, because when you're neurodivergent, usually the things that you find easy are the things that others find hard. And therefore, you don't value in yourself, but others value in you. And the things that you find hard, others find easy. And so you're always flagellating, kind of thinking, I could do better, I should try. And you try harder at the things you're never going to get better at. Let me just say, I've been there and tried to wear the T-shirt, and I never was good at the consistent maintenance activities. They just didn't come easily to me.
Again, lean into your calendar though, folks. I mean, your calendar is your ally here. Just put that stuff in the calendar and do the task when it comes up on your calendar, and then you don't have to carry the mental burden of doing all that nonsense.
I can do that if I colour code it and make it interesting.
Yeah. That's right.
I have often, when I've been coaching people, I say, and what colour is it in your calendar? And they go, red. And I said, is red a colour that you enjoy? And they went, no, I hate red. I said, why is it red in your calendar? It needs to get done. What colour might encourage you to do that task? Oh, I never thought of it like that. So all the tasks that I want to enjoy that I don't are colour-coded turquoise, teal.
Oh, that's funny. You talk about neurodivergence and senior leadership. I would say actually it becomes more of a superpower later in your career, right? All the things we talk about, being able to think systematically, being able to generate vision, being able to handle many different and disparate and sometimes conflicting pieces of organization and hold them in your head at the same time, be interested in many things and their influence. These are all senior leadership requirements, actually. Early in your career, where you, certainly in R&D, but in many cases, you're supposed to be the expert and you're really supposed to be focused on one thing and not distracted by these many other things. I actually think it's harder then.
I agree. Yeah. I used to describe that if I could do those tasks, the managerial tasks, that was my license to operate strategically. So I used to say I could gift myself the opportunity to do that leadership stuff if I could get the other stuff done first. It was really hard to balance it. I've really enjoyed this discussion, Fiona. I want to take you into a place that I know you love anyway, which is think about the future. If you could change one long-standing leadership norm and make workplaces even more inclusive, what would it be?
One thing, I really would advocate for gardener leadership. We discussed this earlier, but I think valuing and understanding growing of people and growing a garden of individuals and really putting that out there in the world, to me, that is the soul and center of inclusivity for all different kinds of people. It's meeting people where they're at. It's growing them. It's getting the best for them and the best from them. And I think embracing that style and really advocating for it and showing how that is a win-win for the organization because we're also generating more production, more productivity, fewer crises, and hopefully providing that wonderful work environment for people. That is the thing, really. Fundamentally, I think we need at least two different styles of leadership and to be more purpose and more people orientated.
Fabulous. And is there somewhere that people could maybe find information or look that style up? Or is this something you've created and invented yourself?
To my knowledge, it's from my mind to yours, folks. So.
Okay. It's a lovely metaphor because of neurodiversity is often described in terms of flowers and biodiversity. There's a phrase, when a flower doesn't bloom, you fix the environment, not the flower. And so I love your advocacy for gardener leadership. I wholeheartedly hope that people see that this is the future for getting the best from and for people. Is there anything else you think you'd like to add?
I would say maybe one or two more things to think about. One is that presenting with authenticity, this is really something that has evolved over time. From nobody should be authentic at work to everybody should be their raw selves at work, which I think is wild, to understanding nuanced authenticity. I would say what we can do for inclusion is we as leaders can role model some of that authenticity in ways that are helpful and welcoming to people. Certainly this has been an evolution for me, right? There's often at meetings, there's like tell us a fun fact about yourself.
Oh, yes.
And for years, I would be like, well, I'm a 2nd degree black belt in self-defense would be my fun fact, right? There you go. It's kind of quirky. Actually, I have also a number of creative hobbies, very left brain, right brain. Work is pretty analytical.
Yeah.
And you fly a computer a lot. And I like to make things with my hands, and I'll make jewelry at home myself, right? I'm wearing some. There you go. And I don't measure any of it, right? I just do it by eye and make it and solve little mechanical engineering problems in my head. And so one fun fact is, well, I also make jewelry.
And I didn't know that about you until very recently, actually. And I love it.
And I would have absolutely withered and died before admitting to such a girly fact about myself while trying to be an R&D leader.
Yeah.
Right. And if you really think about how I felt that internal pressure and external pressure to say, oh, well, I know how to fight, and not to say, I know how to create lovely things and make you happy. Those are both authentic facts about myself. But what I chose to come forward with and allowed myself to say is very different. And so we can continue that journey for ourselves on how we present with authenticity, and we can role model that, I think, in complex ways.
I completely agree. I've interviewed lots and lots of people in my career, and the attitude that people expressed when somebody put on their career, on their hobbies and interests, crafts like knitting or crochet, nobody was as interested in that as, say, a sporting hobby or
abseiling, which is obviously so much more compelling.
Yeah, whichever, And to be honest, like you've said, that type of attention to detail and interest in activity and creating something from a ball of string, I love it. And I would never have admitted to being somebody who knits, but I'm absolutely into knitting, tapestry. I mean, I am an old world sort of crafting person, but that never found its way on my CV.
And you've got many, many aspects and that creativity, that spark of imagination actually, again, is something that allows you to imagine things that aren't there yet, which I think is very useful in your work life. So that should be something that we pay more attention to. And I hope we as leaders can think about.
Yeah, and allow people, because the relationship to neurodiversity there is when I'm working with people, is allow yourself to do these activities that soothe your nervous system. I can do a row of knitting in between one call and the next. Well, if somebody saw me knitting on a call, I could knit and listen. In fact, it actually helps me to do the two together. But if I were to do that in a meeting, I would be probably not treated very positively.
And yes, it can activate that listening pathway for you. Yeah. Which is why I think so many people end up fiddling with pens or what have you in meetings.
Socially acceptable fidget
Socially
toys.
acceptable. Yeah, exactly. And The other nugget that I'll throw out there to think about is for early stage career folks, I think it can be very intimidating when you look at companies. It brings to mind like the great monolith, like, it's a great monolith. Well, companies are not monoliths. They're composed of many, many people. And I encourage you to think about that and get on work social networking sites, get connected with folks, and think about who could you connect to in an industry or company that you are interested in, and start chatting to people and learning their journey and growing your network, and use that learning capability to pay attention to many things. This is about networking. People mistake networking as when I need a job, I'm going to go and see if I can ask people for help. And I think that's exactly backwards in time.
Agree.
Networking is a future forwards activity. You go out and you find people proactively and you look for opportunities to help them. And some of the way to help them is by valuing their journey and learning from it, again, particularly if you're early stage, and building your network over time such that it naturally grows opportunities and connections as you build it, as you weave it. So just really organic growth is maybe this theme that we're touching on here. Is you don't have to wait until last minute and have the goal. You can have these growth orientated mindsets.
I wouldn't have the successful business I have today had I not been a passionate networker, just because I love to meet new people, exactly like you say, Fiona, the whole of my career. It wasn't something I did when I needed it. I did it because I was curious to know what I didn't know. So I used to love meeting people.
And you, Kate, I happen to know, are also passionate about doing everything in your power to help other people, right? And you're very effective at that. And so that shines through, that genuineness shines through, and you're looking for opportunities to help, and you've manifested many of them. Great stuff.
Thank you. Well, Fiona, again, it's been absolutely amazing speaking to you. I always enjoy our conversations. I think we've touched so many different things around neurodiversity, inclusion, change management, workplace and leadership. If people wanted to get in touch with you, Fiona, thinking about the networking side, how might they do that?
LinkedIn is, I would say, the best way. You can always message on LinkedIn, and I'm certainly very easy to find. There aren't many Fiona Plowses out in the world.
Wonderful. Do connect with Fiona. Networking, building those relationships that we just said, you never know where that might lead you. So I encourage you to connect with me and Fiona. It's just been a joy. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're so welcome.
Thank you for listening to another podcast by the Association for Coaching. For over 20 years, our purpose has been to inspire and champion coaching excellence, advance the coaching profession, and make a sustainable difference to individuals, organisations, and society. To find out more about the AC and our member benefits, follow us on LinkedIn or visit our webpage at associationforcoaching.com. where you can explore our digital learning hub and enjoy our extensive library of on-demand webinars, podcasts, and a portfolio of live events featuring thought leadership tools, models, and the very latest industry trends to help you develop your coaching expertise.